My name's Andy Pratico, and we'll get started. I see a couple of people I've talked to before are signed in, so that's great. The whole point of today is to educate on how to uncover the truth about an ERP, not the ERPs that I work with, any ERP at all. There are so many challenges, and it's so difficult to uncover the truth about ERP systems. It gets to be very confusing. And, if any of you have evaluated ERP software, you already know that. As a matter of fact, Colin, I saw you were already logged in. Have you ever evaluated ERP software before?
I'm here. Have I evaluated it? Not fully. We're just
before. Have you ever sat through a sales demo?
Yes, I have, but it's been years.
That's okay. How long was the sales demo?
An hour and a half.
There you go. Thank you. How much did you learn?
Probably not 10% of what the product could actually do.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, Colin, if you learn 10%, that's because you're a Mensa. No disrespect, because everybody wants to kick tires before they take the car, buy the car or take the car for a test drive. But you're going to find out my opinion about sales demos is not very high. There's a lot of other ways of evaluating ERP software. And we'll talk, and we'll have feedback, and maybe I'll pick on you a few more times yet, Colin. But, the whole point, the whole reason why we evaluate or spend all this time evaluating ERP software is because we're trying to uncover the truth. That's all. Because if you know the truth, it's easy to decide which one's the best one for you. The problem is that there's so much marketing fluff and so much misunderstood messaging out there, it makes it nearly impossible. I already asked you this question, Colin, but here's a little joke for you. And that question about asking, have you ever sat through a sales demo, is to everybody, of course, because lots of us have sat through demos thinking that you're supposed to be able to evaluate and understand which one's the best for us. But if you see what Dilbert's doing here, he says, my software isn't even finished. It's not even 100% complete. But let me talk you through it. If I had a user interface that would do this and a little bit over there, you'd be saying, I got to get me some of that. Any questions? And that's my comical description of a sales demo.
Not too far from the truth, Andy.
Not too far from the truth. I know. And you'll all understand why before the end of the presentation. I've got a little joke, a little riddle I have in my book, actually. And it goes, what's the difference between a used car salesperson and an ERP salesperson? Anybody want to guess? You want to guess, Colin?
I'm thinking not a whole
Don't worry about it. The difference is, the used car salesman's lying to you. I got in this business a lot of years ago. I've been doing this all my life. And when I first got in the business I first got in the business in 1981, a long time ago. I had beautiful long hair in those days. And I thought I was getting into a career that would help North American businesses. I was wide-eyed, young guy, trying to, fix the world and do my thing. But after about 5 years in the business, I started realizing that everyone that I'd ever sold an ERP to was not happy. As a matter of fact, they darn right disliked me. And I thought, well, that's not what I wanted to do. That's not what I wanted to do for a career. So I started evaluating and investigating and doing research of why systems are failing, why companies don't like the ERP they have. And I came up with some pretty interesting statistics. And I started doing these presentations to try to educate people. And, I wrote a book, and I'm on a podcast later today where we evaluate another ERP every week, every Tuesday. And I publish a lot of articles on LinkedIn too. But anyways, the point is that every survey I read stated that dissatisfaction of ERP systems was terrible. There's this one called Standish Group said 83.8% of all IT projects cost double the original budget or never finish, if you can believe it. There's another analyst group in Denver called Panorama, and you can see the statistics that they put out. These are embarrassing. I read an article from the Wall Street Journal, and it stated 73.8% of companies don't like the ERP they have right now. It's all embarrassing, especially considering I've been doing this all my life. It's embarrassing to me. I mentioned that company called Panorama. They're a ERP analyst group that evaluate, and they do a lot of things. They help you evaluate ERP software. They can help you implement ERP software. And if you look at their website, they have a landing page that after you're not happy with your ERP vendor, you can hire them to be your expert witness when you sue. When you sue your ERP vendor. They got the whole industry going from both ends. They've created a new business model. It's amazing.
Coming and going, huh?
Coming and going, just trying to make a living. Yeah? You can pay him to help you select, and you can pay him to help you sue. It's
it's crazy. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's lots of reasons why ERP implementations are compromised. There's lots. Naive selection processes, because people think ERPs are all the same. And in demos, if you sit through 3 or 4 demos, you will think they're all the same. Top management not involved, poor planning, unreliable data. There's lots of reasons why people don't like their current ERP. But the one that we never consider is that the ERP selection process is flawed. And that's the reason why we're doing these presentations today. Because, the only reason we spend all this effort to evaluate ERP software is to uncover the truth. Yet the ERP companies and the ERP salespeople do a lot to make sure you don't uncover the truth, because they don't want you knowing the truth, because 3/4 of your customers are not happy. This is a chart that Brett and myself created a while ago. And this is the way how most people evaluate ERP software. As a matter of fact, if you typed into Google, how do I evaluate ERP software, you get some semblance of these 8 steps. That sound fair, Brett?
Yeah. Well, let's ask the audience. Does this look like a comment for those who have evaluated ERP in the past? Does this look like the common steps that you may go through when you evaluate something like ERP? And you can go ahead and unmute if you're on mute, or
it's okay. And if you're shy, that's okay too. Colin mentioned he saw a sales demo. I'm not sure if he went through the whole process last time around, but it's a logical step of how to evaluate a capital expenditure. The problem is that a capital expenditure is software, definitely ERP software, but it can also be equipment or a new truck or a lot of different things. But when you're buying a new truck or a new piece of equipment, there might be 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 things that you focus on before you buy that machine. With ERP, there's tens of thousands. It's impossible to follow this process, but we all try to because we're familiar with. So what I'm going to do today is describe why these 8 steps might not be the best way to evaluate software. And then we'll come back and we'll finish up with another an alternative that might be more effective. Something that some food for thought.
And just a point here, real quick, Andy. This process also comes not only from analysts and consultants that engage in the evaluation of ERP, but it also comes from personally talking to hundreds of companies about what they're using today, what works and what doesn't work. And at the end, we'll talk a little bit more about that, and have a specific offer for those on the phone who want to learn a little bit more. And
you're gonna hear Brett say, "We have operators standing by, and if you buy the next 10 minutes, we'll give you this wonderful offer." Some ginseng
and a free set of steak knives, Andy.
Yes, free set of steak knives. No. What Brett's talking about is between the two of us, we've been in the ERP business for over 60 years, which is amazing. And we've interviewed hundreds of manufacturers all over North America on the pros and cons of what they have now. And we've accumulated that data into a comparison sheet. And you'll be all welcome to review that comparison sheet. It's like 3 dozen different ERPs. If you want to, just let us know. We'll schedule up a session. But the point is that this way that you think that you should be evaluating ERP software might be flawed. The first step on those 8 things was getting budget approval. Do you have any idea, Brett, how companies get budget approval?
Oh, they probably
know how much you spend, right? How much?
Well, they'll ask the ERP vendor, how much does your software cost?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
But the sad thing about that is that when you're speaking to a salesperson and you say, how much is it going to cost? Probably the same as in any industry. They have a tendency of lowballing because they don't want you to think they're too expensive, and you'll discount them. Because
I'm going to ask what your budget is, Andy. If you're buying software, I'm going to ask you your budget before I give you a price.
Well, that's the other thing too. The salespeople, there's 2 questions salespeople will ask you. ERP salespeople: what's your budget, and when can I do a demo? Then companies will define their requirements. You usually delegate to department heads who delegate to people in their department they're not busy, who want to impress their boss, so they come back with quite a large document. For example, how to create a purchase order. And you come back with 10 or 20 pages on how to create a purchase order, which is very detailed and really good to do. But the problem is, how many departments does the company have, Brett?
Well, I mean, depending on the company, but let's say 10,
10, 20, 30.
30. It could depend. Yeah.
But now you've got those 5 or 10 pages times 30. So you get this thing called War and Peace, which for your requirements list, and it's just too thick for you to humanly use. Now we take this huge, thick RFP, this War and Peace, 4 inches thick, and we send it to ERP companies, and we say, okay, here's our list of requirements we want the software to do. How much can you do? And guess how ERP salespeople answer that question? Any idea, Brett?
We do it all, Andy.
We do it all.
Well, we may take a couple and just expand on it a little bit to make it look like we're trying. But have you ever used Excel? And most companies put Excel spreadsheets together like this with all their requirements. What happens if you take like an out of the box that Andy has here, which means yes. There's a little function you could drag the whole spreadsheet to say, yes.
If you just grab the right-hand corner of a cell, you all know this, drag it down, whatever the first cell is, it'll populate all the other cells. So they're going to say yes to everything because they don't want you to discount them. This screenshot right here, and I brought up my cartoon a little too quick there because I wanted you to see the screenshot first. This screenshot's from an ERP analyst group helping the company evaluate ERP systems, ERP software. So they've documented their requirements. But if you notice down the left-hand column, it's only a very small snapshot of the entire RFP. It's row 683 to row 709. So that would be 26 rows. But this is 26 rows from an RFP that was 3,000 rows long, or more than 3,000, if you can believe it. And the really crazy thing is these 26, and the reason why I have this piece on the slide is it's the same question being asked 26 different ways. It's kind of like those lawyers on all those lawyer shows where they try to trip you up by asking the same question over and over again. Every one of these questions is asking me, does your software do MRP? Well, duh. Every ERP system is designed for manufacturers will do MRP. Now, maybe you have some unique requirements that is critical to you. So yeah, you want to focus on that to make sure it does that. But if you read, and we'll email you these PowerPoints, by the way. You don't have to take notes or anything. We'll email you a recording of the whole thing too. But if you take the time and read every question, they're all the same. It's amazing. Now here's my Dilbert cartoon I brought up a little too quick a second ago. But the point about this cartoon is Dilbert's talking to the scientist, and he goes, do you know that 400 features would be impossible for a human to evaluate? And the sheet behind is over 3,000, not 400. So the scientist says, good point. I better add ease of use to the list. And you know what? On every one of these RFPs I get, one of the very first questions they ask is your ERP easy to use? And Brett, how does an ERP salesperson answer that question?
Yes, every single time.
Every single time. And you know what? It's a lie. It's all a lie because none of them are easy to use. You know, this chart is a simplified flow chart of an ERP system. I'd ask you to put your hands up if we were in an auditorium or something and I was doing this presentation. But how many of you think that looks easy? I don't think it does. As a matter of fact, I think it looks darn right confusing. As a matter of fact, even further, you know how when you're documenting processes, you use those sticky notes and you put them on the wall. If you were documenting the processes of an ERP system with sticky notes on the wall, it would go around your wall, all 4 walls of your office, probably 50 times. They are not easy. None of them are. Now, once you learn them, they can become easy. But my goodness, I want you all to think about it, the people that are on the audience that have watched have used an ERP system before. How long did it take before you were fluent? Some people will tell me a few months, and I'll tell those people they were minces as well, because my goodness, a few months. Usually it takes a year, if not a few years. So what do you learn? As Colin said, his sales demo that he watched a couple of years ago was 90 minutes long. How much do you learn in 90 minutes? Or let's say the demo's 3 hours. Let's say it's 8 hours. How much do you learn in 8 hours when it takes years to become fluent? There's a little cartoon. My friend Brett here helped us design. It's called the Oxymoron Cafe, and you see you got jumbo shrimp, vegetarian hamburger, boneless ribs, and easy to use ERP. It just, it's just crazy.
It's crazy, Andy. I mean, there's been studies done. This one was done by Deloitte, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But just to highlight the ease of use type of thing, what are usually the top 3 criteria for a company evaluating ERP?
Let's wait till we get to that slide, Brett, and then they can see it.
Yeah.
But I agree with you 100%, Brett. I know what you're talking about.
But this ease of use, usually one of the top criteria.
Totally. Everyone wants an easy to use system. Why? Because we're afraid of learning something new. That's human nature. But I'm sorry, none of them are easy to learn. And, I mentioned this already. Salespeople are going to ask you right off the hop, how much is your budget? Any idea why they ask that question, Brett?
Because they want to make sure that you could afford their software.
That's one reason.
That's right? One reason.
Because if they're selling SAP and
they don't
$10 million, they don't want you to, and your budget's $50,000 or $100,000, they don't want to waste your time. Which is another reason.
Legitimate. But there's another reason, and that's because they don't want to be discounted. They don't want to be kicked out of the evaluation for having too high of a price.
Exactly. So when they say to you, how much is your budget? Well, for example, let's just say a client I asked a client how much is their budget, and they tell me it's $100,000, like we were just saying a minute ago. I go back to my office and I calculate the software is $95,000. Guess how much I put in my proposal for training? Any idea, Brett?
Well, you're gonna come under that. You're gonna come under that. I'll say
for you, Brett. I'll put $49.95 for training because I want to make it just under your budget. The point is that just because I put an amount on the proposal of how much it's going to cost to implement doesn't mean that's what it's going to cost. No one knows. I don't know how fast you learn. We don't do an IQ test of your team. Here's a little cartoon, another Ratbird cartoon. Not Ratbird, Dilbert cartoon. He says, well, what if the system doesn't work on the first try? Won't the economic impact be devastating? And of course, the consultant, Ratbert, says, let me check my contract. Nope, I get paid exactly the same. And that's the point, is that let's just, obviously saying $49.95 for training was hyperbole, but it's an exaggeration. But let's just say I quoted you $5,000 for training. You would think, wow, this must be super easy to learn. I'm going to buy this one. So you buy it, and after a week, you've used up the $5,000 worth of training. And you say, hey, Andy, I need more training. And I'll say, no problem. Where do you want me to send the invoice? Because it does not matter what they put on their proposal. They will bill you for the work you do. You ask them for. They get paid exactly the same. Okay, this is back to Colin's comment about the 90-minute sales demo. Because every ERP salesperson is clamoring for you to watch their demo because they're hoping you fall in love. That's the absolute truth. And I'll talk to some people and I'll explain, like how long do you think a sales demo is going to be? And they'll say an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever. And then I'll explain, well, it takes years to become fluent. How much do you think you're going to learn? And then I get this all the time from owners. My staff is very experienced, Andy, and we'll be able to determine which is best for us by reviewing the sales demo. And I just roll my eyes. This is another Dilbert cartoon, and Dilbert's the customer in this one. And the fellow says, hi, I'm Larry. And these people are my vast array of unnecessary tag-alongs. And what did your product do? Oh, we didn't bring that person. Sorry. The point is about this cartoon is how many people does it take to demo the software? If it takes more than one person to show you the ERP, does that imply it's easy to use? I don't think so. Oh, this is good. I'm not sure if any of you ever seen this TV show, but it's called Brain Games. It's on one of those specialty channels like Discovery or something like that. And what it is, it's a show on optical illusions. And I was watching it in an episode, and they made this statement. I thought, wow, this is exactly the point I'm trying to make. And the guy said, did you know the human brain encounters 400 billion bits of data every second? yet it's only capable of being aware of 2,000 bits a second. So think about that. You're in a sales demo and you're getting all this crazy amount of data thrown at you in every direction. And then the boss comes to you after the demo. On top of the fact, the human brain, this is another interesting fact. The human brain can only stay focused on one topic for no more than 10 to 15 minutes. So guess what happens after 10 or 15 minutes? You daydream. We all daydream. So the boss touches you on the shoulder and he goes after the 4-hour sales demo and he says, or she says, what'd you think? Are you going to tell the boss you were daydreaming? No. You're going to say, it just didn't grab me. And that might have been the best system you ever saw. Hey, Brett, I got a question for you. Have you ever walked down the hallway and walked into some room and forgot why you were going in that room?
You know, the senior moments are getting more frequent, Andy.
They're getting more frequent, aren't they? I know. That's what I'm talking about. And we all do that. It's impossible for us to remain focused for hours on end. So during those moments of daydreaming, we don't know what they're saying. We refocus and we get back into it and we tell the boss, oh yeah, no, I was watching the whole darn thing. But the fact is, it's humanly impossible to evaluate ERP software by watching sales demos. This is a really interesting one, and I'm gonna go to another screen here in a moment. And people will say to me, Andy, how many people should I have on my evaluation team? Or how many should I have in the audience during your sales demo? And they did this psychological experiment in the 1950s, and I'll let you read it yourself when you get the PowerPoint. But basically, they found that people were willing to ignore reality and give incorrect answers in order to conform to the rest of the group. And today they call that groupthink, and I'll let Brett describe it to you.
Yeah, and that was an interesting study. I believe it was in the 50s or 60s, but that's what people do when they get into a group setting. They want to conform. They don't want to conflict. They want it to be over. And you think about these ERP evaluations, some take months, some take years. And
you know what? I've seen demos last 2 days.
Oh yeah. Just the demo part. But span that over time from when you start and to when you implement an ERP, it could be a long period of time. All these people, and I think they found with this research that the best decision-making group, or that number that people ask us all the time of how many people I should have in my evaluation team. Well, the decision team, it came out that it would be no more than 5. No more than 5.
Now, let me ask you a question, Brett. What's the largest crowd you gave a sales demo to ever?
My goodness. It was
you already answered my question. Let's not go any farther.
Yeah, it was over 30 people.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But you see, we all think we got to get buy-in from everybody in the company or all the department heads. The problem is this is what happens. You don't get an honest opinion. There's something else called the contrast principle. Have any of you ever noticed an ERP company clamoring to be the last one that you see, the last demo you see? Well, there's another psychological principle. It's called the contrast principle, which is a human perception that affects the way we see the difference between two things that are presented one after another. Simply put, if the second item is fairly different from the first, we will tend to see it as more different than it actually is. And what that means in ERP sales demo is the last one you see places a higher impact on your psyche. So you'll find some ERP companies trying to be the last one you see. When I was living in the U.S., I lived in the U.S. for 11 years. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, for all the folks that don't know. That's where I grew up. I'm a Canadian. But I lived in the U.S. for 11 years, and there was this company in Montana, and they said, Andy, would you come up and give me a demo next week? And I went, sure. I've got XYZ coming in this week. I won't tell you who XYZ was, but they're going to give me a demo this week, so I want you to come up next week. So I went up there, and I said, hey, how did XYZ demo go? And he goes, oh, the guy delayed. It was, he's going to come in next week now. And I went, really? Why did he delay? And he goes, well, his uncle passed away. I went, oh, that's terrible. Well, over the coming months, I competed against XYZ a number of times. And every time they were scheduled to demo before me, all of a sudden announced that their uncle died and they delayed the demo to be after me.
How many uncles did he have?
My question is, how many uncles did he have? And here we're getting down to the short strokes, and we ask for references. Have any of you ever applied for a job and used a resume? And on that resume, did you have references? And here's the question: how many of those references didn't like you? Not too many. How much value was there from your potential employer of phoning those references when they were your uncle and your dad? Probably not a lot of value. The same thing with ERP vendors. And you know what? We have a tendency of asking for references at the last step. I think you should ask for references as the first step, but not just any references. You don't want to talk to their uncles, their best ones, the ones they've been buying lunches for every day for the last 3 weeks to make sure they say something nice. You want to speak to objective references, and that's the problem, is that ERP companies will rarely give you objective references because 73.8% of companies don't like their ERP. They'll run out of customers to give you if you ask for 5 references and every company they're talking to asks for 5 references, they're going to run out. So there is a trick, and we're going to teach you how to come across, how to uncover objective references, because that's the most important step in evaluating the ERP. But here's another one of those cartoons. I'll let you read it. It's about references. And I guess what I'm telling you is that if you ask Brett or myself for references, make sure we're in the parking lot before you call them, okay?
You can just change your voice a little bit.
Just change get one of those computerized things.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If most people don't like their ERP, and if you're using the same approach that they did in evaluating ERP software, isn't that the definition of something? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result? Insanity. There's got to be a better way. And there is a better way. What I'm going to teach you now, you get the idea. ERP companies know you're doing all that stuff. So they are proactive to make sure they look best against those 8 steps you use to evaluate software instead of what's best for your company. So here's another way, an alternative way. It's faster, easier, cheaper, and 100% successful. So people say to me, well, Andy, if your process is so great, why doesn't everybody do it? Well, there's another psychological principle. And we assume that to evaluate something complex like an ERP system, to evaluate something complex requires a complex evaluation. I don't believe it. I don't think you need it. Here's just a few steps, 100% successful, easy, and you'll uncover the truth faster than you can say anything. Now, step number 1, is there a business case that supports an ERP investment? Now, early on, I asked Colin if he sat through a sales demo, and he did. It was a 90-minute sales demo. Another question I asked folks is, have you ever been through an implementation of an ERP? And let me tell you what. Last week, I got 2 fillings on this side and 2 fillings on this side. I would rather go to the dentist and get 4 fillings than first, number 1, sit through a sales demo, and number 2, implement an ERP software. It's a ton of work. If you can't justify a business case for an ERP system, don't buy one. If you're just trying to make the screen on your desk look pretty, that's not justification enough. It's business process reengineering. It's change management. It's a whole new way of running your business. And the ERP vendor you select, you want to have business process reengineering skills as well. Because, people will say, well, Andy, you know what? I'm going to re-engineer my processes before we start looking. And I say, well, that's fine. But realize that once you buy an ERP, the steps that you're creating might not align. So you're going to have to redo them again. So why not do them once during the implementation? But of course, that means your vendor has to have those skills. That's step 1. Actually, step 1 goes into another session, and I call it straightening the cow path. It's all about process reengineering. And I want you to picture this beautiful painting that I've drawn here is a cow that wants to go to the barn up the hill. And, logically, you'd think the cow would go straight ahead like the crow flies, right? No, they don't. They go, those W's, by the way, are grass. They nibble a little bit of grass. They mosey on over to the left. They nibble a little bit. They mosey to the right. Eventually, they make it to the barn. But why didn't they go like the crows fly? Because cows mosey, cows meander. Just like your internal processes. You know what? Your internal processes at one time were defined perfectly, and they were streamlined back when you first defined them. The problem is we all grow. We all add new customers, new products, new machines, new processes, new employees. And before you know it, we're creating constraints in the processes. What used to take minutes now take hours to go around those constraints, meandering around those constraints, sometimes days. You have to re-engineer your processes while you're implementing the ERP. And if you don't, the new ERP is just going to be pretty screens in front of your current problems. No benefit. Your problems will happen faster. That's all. Step number 2. Remember we talked about that RFP and the War and Peace and how thick they can get, 400 pages or whatever. And every ERP vendor says yes to everything. Focus on your unique and critical requirements. That one sheet I showed you, that 26 rows asking if they had MRP. Every ERP that's designed for manufacturers can do MRP. Every ERP that does accounting will have an age trial balance. Why do you focus on something that every system does? Focus on what's critical and unique. What's critical and unique to a company, Brett?
Well, it first depends on what type of company you are. Are you a manufacturer? Are you a distributor? Are you retail? ERP means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But your unique and critical requirements it's your competitive advantages. What are you differentiating? What is your low-cost leadership strategy?
Why are you in business? Why are you successful?
Exactly.
Because if the ERP cannot do that, why are you talking to them? You know what? There's 1,000 ERPs out there, over 1,000 across the world. And I'll see companies, they'll click a Google search and with the letters ERP, and guess how many they find on Google? The list goes on forever. There's lots of people out there, lots of ERPs out there that you can consider that might fit your critical and unique requirements. If they don't do that, dump them. Don't waste another second. Move on to the next ones. Why would you sit through demos, 6-hour, 8-hour demos, which we've already defined are not, you can't even comprehend anyways? Why would you waste all that company resource if they can't meet your critical requirements? If they don't meet, focus on what's unique and critical to your company. And you know what? If you focus on that instead of making a list of 3,000 items or whatever, you'll be able to determine which systems can do it and which ones can't. It's way easier when you only have a couple pages to work with.
Right. And we're going to get to this step after a couple of slides. But Andy mentioned fairly early on about using references, right? And those unique and critical requirements that you have form the questions that you're going to ask those references.
Exactly.
You're not going to just say, you know, how do you like your ERP? You're going to say, you know, how does it do shop scheduling? You know, how does it make your process faster? You know, these type of questions, if those are critical requirements for your business.
Exactly, because you want to talk to, going back to the references you asked for, you want to talk to references that are already using the same critical and unique requirements that you need. Because you know what? They're past the learning curve. They already know the pros and cons. You know, this is the chart that Brett was talking about earlier, and I pulled this off of the Deloitte's website. And it's really interesting because what it is, it's Deloitte's top 9 reasons why companies buy an ERP. And they compare first-time buyers to second-time buyers. And what do you notice in that list there, Brett?
Well, yeah, that's what we were talking about. Easy use, easy implementation, and price.
So first-time buyers, the first thing they care about is the price. And then it's ease of implementation, ease of use. Well, you can tell what the price is because it's the bottom right-hand corner of the proposal they gave you. That's pretty simple. But these are not commodities. They're not all the same. Even though they look like it in a demo, they're not all the same. Not all of them will meet your critical, unique requirements. And then they focus on ease of implementation and ease of use. How in the heck can they tell how easy it is to use by watching the demo? Are you kidding me?
What's really shocking about this is it almost flips on its head from first time and second time buyers. And you know what I think about when I see this graph is what have second time buyers learned?
Yeah. And if you think about this, like Brett said, the first time buyers care about the price. That's number one. Do they think they're all the same? Second time buyers, price goes down to number 5. But ease of use and ease of implementation drops down to last. Because they realize that none of these are easy to use until after you're past the learning curve. Once you're past the learning curve, they're all easy.
Well,
you gotta learn it first.
And another good point of this, Andy, is that you notice that level of reseller support is the top of the list of the second time buyers, while the price of the software is for first time buyers. Have they figured out something that drives the price?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what do you think about that, Andy?
Well, you know what? I'll go in a different direction. They say that you notice that everything we do so far evaluating ERP software is around the functionality.
Yep.
And the reality is that there's so much functionality in ERPs, it's humanly impossible to evaluate them all. They say that the percentage towards ERP success that functionality relates to is only 20%. 80% is dependent upon the company you work with, the partner you work with, especially with business process reengineering and change management. because they will guide you through all the steps. And trust me, ERP implementations are not fun.
And you gave that number of $49.95 for training, which was an exaggeration, right? But let's say it's $50,000 for training.
Yep.
When is it when you run out of that? How long into the project, Andy, is a company usually before they say, oh shoot, I need to buy more training?
Not only that, you got approval at the beginning from upper management on that budget. Now you've spent your $5,000 or whatever, 50,000. I don't care what the number is, but you've already used it up. And now you got to go back to upper management and justify more money. What do you think they're going to say to you? They're not going to be happy. That's for sure.
They've already spent a lot of money, right?
Yeah, I'll say.
And
remember we talked about another way how to uncover unbiased references? Here's the trick. This is step number 3. Not at the end of the evaluation process. The very first step. Because you already have a list of ERP vendors because you did a Google search and you came up with a couple hundred probably. But you're getting serious with 10 or 20 probably. I don't know. Ask every one of them for a list of customers. This is immediate. First thing. That are local. So you can confirm quality and local support. That are a similar size to make sure the software is not too big or not too small. In a similar industry or using the same critical and unique requirements that you want to use, that they're already using them. And lastly, the 4th step is they've been using it for more than 12 months, so they're past the learning curve. Because these companies will be able to tell you what the pros and cons are. These are the ones that Brett and I interview to create our ERP comparison sheet too. We don't watch sales demos when we're evaluating or uncovering the truth about ERP systems. We ask the customers. They're the ones that know. If you force every ERP vendor at the very beginning to give you a list of customers that match these 4 criteria, they're either going to give you a list, which is fantastic, or they're going to say, I'm sorry, I don't have any customers that meet that criteria. Well, if they say that, hightail it. You don't want to talk to them anymore. Or how about this one? This is another one. I'm sorry, Mr. Andy. We don't provide references until we're the selected vendor. Get rid of them. You decide how you want to evaluate, not them. You're the customer. They don't decide how you're going to evaluate. And you want to talk to their objective customers immediately so you know the truth. I mean, just because an objective customer says they're having some kind of a problem with the software doesn't mean you're not going to buy that software. The point is you want to uncover the faults, the problems, the issues, the cons prior to implementing, because then you can plan around them. You don't want it to be a surprise. Step number 4. Remember we talked about what it costs, the 2 questions that ERP salespeople will ask. How much is your budget? And when can I give you a demo? Well, when they tell you an amount for your budget, quite often they're trying to make sure their price for software and implementation combined is under that number because they don't want you to discount them. How come some ERPs quote more to implement than others? Any idea, Brett?
I have no idea, Andy.
That's okay, because I do. The reason why is because not all ERP vendors provide the same level of service as the others do. Remember I described business process reengineering and change management? Very few offer that. As a matter of fact, let's say you get 3 quotes and one says $5,000 to implement, one says $50,000 to implement, to implement, and one says 500,000 to implement. Now, I'm just giving you random numbers. Every ERP requires the same steps for you to go live, to be completed. Every ERP requires the same steps. So if they're quoting less, it's because they expect you to do more of those steps. They expect for you to take more responsibility. If they are quoting more, it's very possible it's because they're taking a lot more of the responsibility of the project. All companies require the same steps for you to complete, for you to go live. How much you take responsibility for is how much it'll cost. Because it's always the more you do, the faster you learn, the less it's going to cost, and vice versa. The number they put on the quote is usually pretty fictitious. Here's step number 5. If you're still not convinced, I mean, those 4 steps, you should have a pretty good idea which one you like. But if you're still not convinced, and you'll also notice that none of those 4 steps mention sales demos, because I don't believe in them. Now, if you ask me to schedule a sales demo, I will, of course, because you do want to take the car for a test drive before you buy. I completely understand. I just want you to know that you're not going to learn anything. All you'll learn is how pretty it is or how cheap it is. That's about it. So when you ask for a demo, instead of sitting through getting a presentation by someone's title, which is pre-sales consultant, here's a question for y'all. Anyone know what this is? The title of the person who demos to you, by the way. Pre-sales consultant. Anyone know the definition of a pre-sales consultant is? It's someone you're never going to see again after you sign the contract. That's the definition. Why not get demos with people you'll work with after you sign, after you buy? Get to know the people that you're going to be working with and implementing. And besides, if the person that's giving you the demo is working with you after you buy, they have skin in the game. They have to be honest. They cannot exaggerate. They can't tell you white lies. They got to tell you the truth because they got to put up with you after you buy.
It also highlights that Deloitte metric on second-time buyers, right, Andy? You're
absolutely right.
You're vetting your reseller.
You're vetting your reseller. You're vetting the expertise of their team. Absolutely. And then here's one last little sub-step. Let's say you've gone through the 5 steps and you've decided, okay, it's one of these 2. One's an end-to-end ERP and one requires bolt-ons. Always choose an end-to-end system with good local support first. Yes, we all heard about these things called APIs and that apparently that any system can integrate to anything these days. But the reality and the truth is integration is never as strong as it was during the original development of that ERP with it in itself. No third-party add-ons will ever be as integrated as that functionality would have been integrated if it was built in from the beginning. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and some of you that are project managers will recognize this. This is the psychological experience we go through when we're evaluating any kind of a project, when we're conducting any kind of a project, and implementing an ERP is a project or a project for you Americans. No, pardon me. I got it backwards. Projects are Canadian. See, I lived in the U.S. for 11 years, so I'm bilingual. Projects are American, but we all know it's projects, by the way. And the reason why is because professional hockey players are professionals, not professionals. Correct, Brett?
I'll agree there, Andy.
You'll have to agree.
I'll call it projects from now on.
That's okay. The point is where it says hi, that little bullet at the very top at the beginning, that's where you are right now, after the sales demo. And you think you know everything. Then you get in the middle of the implementation, you go, oh my goodness, there's more than I thought. And some people actually get to the point of saying, I might not ever understand this. And that's when they stop. Or else they stop because you keep on going back to the owners and asking them for more money for more training. And they say, no way. But if you get the right vendor that will take you hand in hand through all the trials and tribulations, and there will be trials and tribulations, stepping you through right to the very end, you will eventually say or answer the questions. Was it easy? No. Was it complicated? Yes, but we made it. We made it.
It's kind of like bridging that first point with the second point, right?
Totally.
And so you don't fall into the valley of death.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe. If we want to get into reading off some, I should put a psalm at the bottom there, eh? So this is the 8 steps we talked about originally. And I hope you're starting to understand how ERP companies recognize this is how you evaluate systems. They spend all of their effort to look good on those 8 steps. I suggest to make it simple. 5 simple steps. And if you have any questions after the presentation today, call me or Brett anytime, email us anytime. We will help you. And you'll get a copy of this presentation anyways. But the point is that you got to define your business case. Justify you need one. Because if you can't justify it, run. You don't want to implement an ERP unless you can justify it. Focus on your unique and critical requirements only. Because it's got to do that or you can't go with it. Visit objective vendor references. And we've already talked to you about how you can find or uncover objective references. Speaking of the ones that they give you, if you ask an ERP vendor for 3 references and they've got 5,000 customers, let's just say, and they give you their 3 best references, that's a 0.06 percentile of success. What are the chances of you being in the 0.06 percentile of success?
94.
No. 0.06%. You're reading the math backwards, Brett.
Oh, I'm going backwards.
0.06. Not very good odds is what I'm saying. And then if you really want to get a demo, which of course you will, get them to get the trainer to show you the demo. So because they have skin in the game after they buy. Now I'm going to tell you all a joke. Y'all remember a guy named Steve Jobs passed away a few years ago? He went up to the pearly gates and St. Peter's was waiting there for him. And St. Peter said, Steve Jobs, holy cow. I've been watching you from afar for forever. Back in the 1980s, you and your buddy were in this little wee garage and you were making these things called Apples and Macintoshes. And holy cow, today you've transformed how humankind communicates. Everybody's got Apple Watches, iPhones, iPads, iTab, everything's something. Everyone's got them. You know what? I'm going to let you have your choice. And Steve asked St. Peter's, what do you mean by my choice? He goes, I'm going to let you choose whether you want to go up there or down there. Huh. Wow. Okay. Well, okay. Do I get to have a look first? And St. Peter says, sure. The elevator's right over there. Go ahead and go in the elevator and press down. So he presses down, goes to the bottom floor, opens up the door, and he sees white, pearly sand beaches. On the left, he sees waves lapping up, and he can feel the warmth of the breeze. On the right, he sees some teenagers playing beach volleyball. And right directly in front of him, he sees this couple. They're at one of those thatched roof tables, those round tables. They're holding hands. They're obviously in love. They're staring at each other. And in the distance, he sees a waiter bringing them. They get holding a tray in the air, and he's bringing them cocktails with umbrellas in them. And Steve says, holy cow, I had no idea it was like this. I can hardly wait to see what it's like up there. So he goes back into the elevator, goes to the top floor, Opens the door and he sees everybody wearing white gowns. They got wings on their back, halos on their head. They're all playing the harp and they're floating around on white fluffy clouds. And Steve says, it's, it's okay. It's kind of boring, but it's okay. I kind of like it down there. So he goes back to St. Peter and says, I've decided I want to go down there. St. Peter snaps his fingers, says, go back in the elevator, press down. He goes to the bottom floor, opens up the door, fire and brimstone. There's some guy with horns poking everybody with a pitchfork in a red suit. He yells back up to St. Peter, that isn't what you showed me 10 minutes ago. And St. Peter says, that was the sales demo. Now, I hope you have some questions, and we're open up for questions in a minute. But at the very beginning of the presentation, we promise you two things: how to uncover the truth. And if you follow those 5 steps, you will uncover the truth. And that's all we care about when we're evaluating. That's why we spend so much time on it. Excuse me. We also said that we would promise to offer you a special offer, which is scheduling some time to look across our ERP comparison sheet. This comparison sheet, you see a little snapshot there on the top right. It compares 36 different systems, and it's not from watching demos, reading marketing material, or looking at their website, or listening to salespeople. It is from speaking to their customers, pros and cons. And we only document a pro and con if we hear it from more than one company to eliminate bias. So if you want to learn about any of these systems, let us know and we'll schedule a session. Let's open up for final questions. Huh? Anybody have any questions?
Right now, we don't have any question, but if you have any question, you can use Q&A section, which there should be a button at the bottom of your screen with a question mark, so you can click there.
And you know what? If you don't have any questions today, that's okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes during presentations, the question you want to ask, especially during sales demos, the question you wanted to ask, the best question happens 5 minutes after the presentation ends. The guy's left. It's too late. If you have any questions at all regarding how to evaluate, how to uncover the truth about ERP software, send Brett or myself an email anytime. That's our emails at the bottom, and our LinkedIn page is at the bottom. And we will do our best to help you. As a matter of fact, our promise to you is if the ERPs that we work with are not a fit in budget or in functionality, we will point you to the ones that are. And I'll tell you what, if you go to my LinkedIn profile and look at the recommendations down the bottom left-hand corner, there's over 24 recommendations there. None of them have ever bought from me. And they'll tell you they appreciated the advice I gave them. Enough to put a recommendation on my LinkedIn profile. That's pretty good.
So they could call your references, Andy.
Well, only when I'm out in the parking lot. Anyways, listen, everybody, thank you so much for spending an hour of your time. I hope you picked up a nugget or two. We are going to email you the recording and the PowerPoint. And if you have any questions at all, anytime at all, we would love to help you. All the best and have a great rest of your day.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.